So I know you're probably thinking that the title of this video is just clickbait and that there's no possible way somebody could get over $6,000 of net cash flow coming in on a monthly basis after all their expenses and all the set-asides recurring every month into perpetuity on one single property that's relatively affordable. And I'll be the first one to say that these type of returns are not common, but they are absolutely doable. And in this video, I'm gonna walk you through exactly how to get one of these properties. And it's not just gonna be conceptual. I'm gonna share with you an actual deal that we just finished, our most recent deal, that's getting these type of returns. It's actually getting closer to $7,000 per month of net cash flow, and it's a really affordable property. I'm gonna walk you through how we found it, what it looked like beforehand, what we did to the property, how we ran our numbers on it, and what really attracted us to this deal when so many other people were passing on it, and how we are renting it out to get these type of returns. And ultimately at the end, I'm gonna share with you a few key concepts that I would highly recommend keeping in mind if you wanna do a property or a deal very similar to this with these type of returns. So first off, let's talk about how we found this deal. So this property is located in Michigan City, Indiana, which is about an hour outside of Chicago. And these are the types of towns that I think work incredibly well if your goal is financial freedom and building as much cash flow as possible. So what I recommend is finding towns that are within driving distance or easy access to a larger city throughout the Midwest and Southeast that are relatively affordable in terms of purchase price, but have some local draws to them. And these towns are all over. And if you look at the purchase price compared to the nightly rate, it's actually a lot cheaper, several times cheaper in most cases, but yet the nightly rate's only slightly less because there's some local draws in that area. So what we did is we set up, and this is what I highly recommend doing, is setting up a search on Zillow or Realtor.com for the area and the type of property that you want to buy, so that as soon as a property pops up, you'll get a notification and you can call the listing agent directly. So that's exactly what we did. As soon as this property popped on the MLS, we called the listing agent directly and said, hey, we don't have a buyer's agent. I'd love for you to represent the seller and us as the buyer, thus making you twice the commission, and we're interested in this property. And she said, great, how quickly do you want to see it? We said right away. So we went to the property, and I want to show you what it looked like when we got there. So here is the property, and these are pictures that I took as we walked through. You can see it was in pretty rough shape. This was a toilet that fell through the floor, and they kind of reinforced the floor underneath. This property was owned by a landlord that passed away. You can see there's 3 hot water heaters here because it's a 3-unit property. And the previous owner passed away, left it to his son, and this is the basement down here. And there was actually a guy living down here in the basement, believe it or not. There was raw sewage accumulating down here because the main sewer pipe was crushed. This property was in rough shape. It needed just about everything that a property could need. There's no maintenance done for the last many, many decades. But I saw that there was a ton of potential. So I did the walkthrough with the agent, and immediately after the walkthrough, I said, yeah, I want to put an offer in. And that's because I had done my preliminary analysis before I showed up. So I had sort of a ballpark estimate of the rehab amount, and I pretty much assumed that it was going to be a gut rehab. So in my head, I had assumed that I was going to spend somewhere around $200,000 to gut this entire 3-unit. And basically the walkthrough just confirmed that. So I said, yeah, let's put in an offer. And she was kind of surprised. She thought I would want to think about it. And she said, okay. She was very old school and liked to do things by hand. And so she said, let's drive to my office and I'll write up the offer and you can sign it there. And I'm used to signing everything via DocuSign, but I said, great, let's do it. So we went to her office, signed the offer, full price, $124,900 is what they were asking. And this is on a ideal street corner, a busy street corner in downtown Michigan City, about a mile walk to Lake Michigan, right next to the outlet mall, right next to all the shops and restaurants. So we put an offer at full price before a whole bunch of other people could submit offers. So this gave us a big leverage. Obviously, all things being equal, she's going to fight for our offer the hardest because she's getting twice the compensation, and it's obviously a strong offer. So we put in a strong offer, but there's 2 contingencies that I put in, and this is why I was so comfortable submitting my offer right away prior to doing a whole bunch of analysis and thinking about it. in all this because there's two contingencies. Number one, the current owner was going to have to get the tenants out of there. And the tenants were semi-squatters. Most weren't really paying, and the place was just a mess. So they knew they needed to leave anyway, but I didn't want to inherit that issue. And then the second thing was an inspection. So I knew that if I did a full inspection and there was anything unforeseen that came up that was a deal killer, I could still walk away from the property. So I know you're probably thinking, why would you be attracted to a property that looks so disgustingly gross in a relatively working class area in Indiana? And I think that that's why there's so much opportunity here, because while most people are targeting the Destin Beaches or the Pigeon Forges or the Joshua Tree type properties, they overlook the opportunity here. So I want to share with you the numbers on this property so you can see why it was so attractive. So here's the numbers that we ran on this property. So you can see just on the first page here, you've got the purchase price. Now we put an offer at $124,900 and it was accepted. That's the full price. But then, like I mentioned, we had our inspection contingency. And so during the inspection, that's when we uncovered that the main sewer line was crushed. There was potential asbestos in the siding. There were some signs of termite damage. And so because of these unforeseen issues, we were able to negotiate about $20,000 off the purchase price. So we got it for $105,000. It was the total purchase price. Now my initial after repair value was around $400,000 is what I thought it would appraise for. Ended up appraising for $360,000 at the end once we rehabbed it. But it still was a pretty solid spread between the purchase price and after repair value. So you can see what the property taxes, because again, it's an affordable area, they're only $2,200 per year, insurance and then furnishings down here. But I was estimating about $200,000 in repairs and it cost me about $220,000. So this is where things get really interesting. And this is why this is such a great deal in my opinion. So here's the high season and the low season rental rates. And I know you're thinking in Indiana, nobody's gonna rent in the winter. And you're right that less people rent in the winter, but we're still booked across the 21 vacation rental listings that we have in that same area. We're booked every single weekend, all winter long. And it's a lot of utilitarian reasons: travel for work, travel for weddings, funerals, visiting family. But sometimes it's weekend getaways. There's a casino in town, there's an outlet mall. So there's reasons that people still travel in the winter, but then in the summer, we're pretty much booked completely solid. Like right now, we are booked completely solid with maybe a day gap here and there. So you can see, because there's 3 sets of income, the nightly rate isn't something to write home about compared to, again, like a Destin Beach location, but you got 3 streams of income in a fixed, really low cost. So when you average the high season on each unit with the low season, and the high season's at a 90% occupancy and the low season's at 50% occupancy, you can see that all 3 units add up to an average of $445 per night with a 70% occupancy. So when you do the math on that, we're bringing in over $122,000 of gross revenue on a really affordable property that we bought for $105,000. Obviously it needs a lot of work. Then you add in the cleaning fees on top of the nightly fees. And so our gross revenue on this property, what we were calculating once the rehab was complete, would be $142,000. And then you can see how the expenses shake out, because there's more expenses on a short-term rental than a long-term rental. So you can see how those expenses shake out down here. And so a total monthly gross income of $11,857, and then the monthly expenses of $59.83. So what we're really interested in though, because we're using private money to purchase and rehab this property, after we refinance it into a long-term loan and pull out most of our capital, what are the numbers gonna look like then? And so that's when it gets really interesting. It appraised for $360 after we were done with the rehab. The loan amount was $270, 75% of what it appraised for. We got a 7.65 rate. So our total payment on this property is $1,915. So you can see how this calculates out to a gross monthly income of almost $12,000. Our total expenses, including our principal, interest, taxes, cleaning fees, utilities, lawn maintenance, set aside for maintenance, all of that is about just under $7,000 per month. So we're making an annual cash flow of about $81,000 per month on a property that we have very little capital invested into. So it's over 100% cash on cash return on this property. So that's the theoretical vision of what the numbers should look like, but everything always looks great on a spreadsheet. So I want to share with you now what it looks like today, because we ended up closing on it last fall. We rehabbed it throughout the winter and we finished it in the spring. So here's what the property looks like today after we finished it. So we gut rehabbed every aspect of this property. So all the plumbing, all the electrical, all the HVAC, everything is brand new. We tried to keep as much historical factors as we possibly could because this property was built in the 1800s. But our intent was to build 3 short-term rental units that could all be rented out separate, or we could rent the entire building together, all 3 units together in what we call a super listing, so that when there's large groups, especially in the summer, when there's 16 people that want to travel together, we can offer the entire building to them and it can sleep their entire group. And so that's what we did. We rehabbed it. It was a big undertaking, but at the end, we were left with something that was really unique. This is the basement that the guy was living in. So ultimately, after $220,000 worth of rehab, we were left with this beautiful property that theoretically should bring in the type of income that I showed you on the spreadsheet, but we had to test it. So we put all 4 listings, each individual listing and the super listing, on Airbnb and VRBO. And luckily, they've been almost consistently booked out ever since. We got a couple of longer term bookings actually right away on a few of the units, and consistently throughout the summer, we are booked up, which obviously is our busy season. But for example, in July, we're planning to bring in over $17,000 gross on this property. So it's going to average over the whole year to between $6,000 and $7,000 net after all of our expenses. I'm putting a link in the description to each of the listings below so you can check those out. And ultimately, if you want to work with me personally to purchase a property similar to this, you can book a call with me and we can chat through your goals and talk about whether the program that I teach, the First Vacation Rental Investment Blueprint, is a good fit for you. So there's another link in the description below. It's www.livingoffrentals.com/call, and that'll take you to a quick questionnaire. And then you can book a call directly with me, and I'm happy to chat through it. But in the meantime, if you're looking for a property like this, what I would say is that there's sort of 3 main factors that I think lead to this type of cash flow. You kind of have to have a good combination of these 3 factors. So I want to share those with you right now. And the first one is multiple streams of income on one property. So many people that I talk to are so drawn to these single family vacation rentals because they feel like, well, that's what I'm gonna book if I take my family on a vacation. But there's so many reasons why people book these smaller multifamily properties, and they're so versatile. And when you look at the numbers with one set of low fixed expenses and multiple streams of income coming in, the cash flow just can't be touched. The second thing is nightly rate versus price ratio is really favorable in this area. So in a lot of places, especially traditional vacation rental areas, the price point, the average price point for properties is through the roof right now. So yeah, the nightly rate might be slightly higher, but your ROI is way off. So if you can buy in the areas that I described, like typically outside of a larger city where there's local draws, you're getting the properties at a big discount, but the nightly rate typically is just lower than it would be in more traditional vacation rental areas or in the city. And the third factor is we exceed the guest expectations. You can buy the absolute best deal in the world. Like this deal, the numbers look pretty phenomenal, but we could screw this thing up and the numbers wouldn't even be close to what's on the spreadsheet. And I think that's the part that a lot of people don't factor in when they're running their numbers up front. They just maybe look at comps or they look at the AirDNA data, but what dictates that is operations and you exceeding the guest expectations. So you have to have systems in place. It doesn't need to require a ton of your time. This is a Friday. We've got probably 15 different check-ins, check-outs. I'm not involved with any of it because we have systems for that. And we also don't have a 25% property manager. We quote unquote manage the properties ourselves. but we still exceed guest expectations in a big way. And so we get really high ratings on our properties. And that's what leads to the high cash flow as well. If this was at all helpful for you, the only thing that I ask is that you hit the like button. And like I said, if you want to work with me personally to find, buy, and set up a deal very similar to the one I just showed you, then book a call with me and we can talk through your goals and whether working together personally might be a good fit. Until then, good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.